In previous videos, you've seen how to track both Scope 1 and Scope 3 emissions. How about tracking Scope 2 emissions? That's what we're going to try in today's class. In my database, I'll go to ESG. I'll go to measure what is my carbon footprint up to this point. I already have Scope 1. These are the direct emissions. I can see total of 0.29, and I can see Scope 3, which is also my lights went out. Scope 3, which is the indirect emissions. So now there's Scope 1, which is missing. We've already talked about these two other scopes. So let's go and check it out. So in my ESG app, I'm going to go to emission sources. And in sources, I can always filter by scope. I want to categorize them. So I can see that there are 613 for Scope 1, Scope 2 14, Scope 3 289. So in Scope 2, I can see there's purchased electricity, purchased steam, heat or cooling, électricité, then mix, réseau électrique, and all that. Essentially, if you remember from previous slides and previous presentations done, purchased electricity, this electricity has been generated somewhere, so there are emissions which go with it. We cannot say these are Scope 3 emissions, and we cannot say they are Scope 1, so they are Scope 2. So basically this is energy that has been generated elsewhere and it is being used on our premise. So we want to track that, and that is basically what we're going to do. I'm going to go out of ESG and I'm going to create a product called electricity, because that's what I'm going to purchase. I'm going to go into any app. I can use sales, manufacturing, or any other app just to create a product. I'm going to call it new, and I'm going to call it electricity. And this electricity, I'm going to say it's a service. And sell price, you can see here it is in units. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change units of measure. Instead of using units, I'm going to use kilowatt hours. So I'm going to create a new unit of measure, and I'm going to call it kilowatt hours. And quantity is 1. So, and the reference, I'm going to call it unit. So anytime I buy 1 kilowatt hour, it's equal to basically 1 unit. Save it. I want to create another unit of measure in the system. So I'm going to go to this application called inventory. I'm just basically showing you that there are different ways of creating units of measure. I can go to products, and then I can go to units and packagings. Once I'm in units and packagings, I can create a new one, megawatt hours, and the megawatt hours will be equal to 1000 kilowatt hours. So basically conversion between each other. Now I want to go and check what are the emission factors for our Kenyan grid. I'm using I'm in a scenario where the database is, the company is based in Kenya. So let's go and see what we can get from the database. So I'm going to go to configuration, I'm going to go to emission factors, and I can filter by scope. And here I can see there's a scope 2, and I can see there's grid electricity 2008, grid electricity 2009, 2011, 2012, and you can see this is a database, DEMI. I do not know if there's a IPCC, so I can just filter also by database. So let's see, so it's only a DEMI. Now this emission factors for the grid electricity may not be the emission factors that I'm looking for. So even if we have our databases, I've mentioned this before, even if we have our databases in place, we still need to do updates now and then from various sources. And so because of that, I just want to show you, for me in Kenya, what would be a source that a resource that I can use to get my emission factors. If I head over to this other slide, so I have reports which I can use to get my emission factors. And so here I'll get it from this agency called EPRA, Energy and Petroleum Regulation Authority. So biannual Energy and Petroleum Statistics report for the financial year 2023 and 2024. And so you can read a lot of things in here, but for us we just want to find the emissions, and I believe they're either in page 20 or page 29. Okay, if it's not here I can look for page 29. This is 2023 and 2024, or if it isn't here I can just do the classic Control F. So let's go and see. So in section 1.6, the greenhouse gas emissions, I can just remove that. For the electricity subsector, I estimated based on the electrical energy generated in the period under review, that's 2023 and 2024, and the prevailing grid emission factor. And then in this report you can see that the national grid emission factor for Kenya is 0.5 ton of CO2 per megawatt hours. But maybe I just want something that is closer to 2026, so let's look at the other report for the financial year 2024 and 2025. This is the latest I've found, and I'm just going to look at what numbers were reported here. So if I go to 29, I hope it's in 29. Yeah, this is where it was in page 29. Greenhouse gas emissions, again, Kenya is a signatory to Paris Agreement, yada, yada, yada. Talks about the greenhouse gases again. But here we find numbers. This is the information that is interesting to us. The commitments have resulted in initiatives that have contributed to emission reductions in the electricity subsector. In the period under review, that's 2024-2025, the CO2 emissions were estimated at this number of tons of CO2 from the total half-year grid electricity generation of that. This translates to what? To a grade emission factor of 0.04927 tons of CO2 per megawatt hours. This is a 6.18% reduction from a similar period, I believe that's 2023-2024, which recorded a grid emission factor of 0.05 ton of CO2 per megawatt hours. Now that alone tells me that there is a discrepancy somewhere, because the previous year it says emission factors were 0.5 tons of CO2 per megawatt hours. The most recent report says that the emissions were 0.0525. Either I'm reading this report wrong, someone can actually correct me or just give me more context to this, but essentially you see how we get uncertainties. So one resource says one thing, another resource says another. So be it as it may, I'm just going to use these figures to create my own emission factors. So we'll go back to Odoo and see how that is configured. If I go to Odoo, go to ESG app, configurations, and then I'll create an emission factor. So I'll just create a new one and I'll call it electricity grid, and I can call it 2024 to 2025. And I can say these are the emission factors. I can say the source is electricity grid. I haven't created it, so that tells me I need to do it. I'm just going to duplicate this. Please remember that I'm using two tabs, one to do the emission factor and the other one to do an emission source. So I'm going to create an emission source, and it's called purchased electricity. So in purchased electricity, I can see that it's a scope 2 indirect, activity flow is upstream. Okay, so that's good. So let's select a source, purchased electricity. That's good. And then company, of course it's my company, and I can say it's valid from let's use it from 1st January. Uncertainty, now again, based on what is being recorded, you can see that we can have an uncertainty factor. Let's say 10, and I want to compute it by quantity. So basically I want to see what is the emission factor per either ton per megawatt hours or kilograms per kilowatt hours. So here I'm going to say kilowatt hours. So now in my report, if you remember, it doesn't say amount of CO2 per kilowatt hours. It actually says tons per megawatt hours. The conversion is really easy, so you just maintain the same numbers, so it will be 0.04927 kilograms per kilowatt hours. You can check how to do that conversion. So I'm not going to go into the details of that, but I'm just going to maintain the same amount, but now instead of having it in tons, I'm going to have it in kilograms, and then on the denominator side I'm going to have kilowatt hours. So okay, so here I'm going to do it. I'm going to put the number, so it's kg per kilowatt hours, and of course you can always change to tons per megawatt hours if you want to. Okay, right, so that's good. I'm not going to relate it to any database, and I'm going to save it. Now anytime I pay for electricity, I want to ensure that I record the amount that is being spent on electricity. So I'm going to leave this space. Let's go to our chart of accounts and see what account are we going to be using for electricity. So I'll go to accounting, chart of accounts, and let's look for electricity. Okay, it isn't there, so I'm just going to look for the expenses account, which is in class 5 for us, and let's see. Okay, I can just select this one, duplicate, let's call it electricity, and I just want to take this code and remember it, and basically copy it, paste it where I'm going to use it. Now back to my ESG app, I have my emission factor. My emission factor is called electricity. Yeah, so that's why I didn't want to move. So 2024, 2025. Yeah, electricity grid. This is the one. I'm going to do assignations, and I'm going to say that anytime we hit this account, so ensure we just record what emissions are there. And then I can select a product. Remember, we created a product called electricity, so I can always assign it like that. So now let's record some scope 2 emissions. I'm going to go to accounting, and I'm going to pay my bill. So I'll create the bill, and let's pay this agency. They're called Kenya Power and Lightning Company. Yep. So I will pay them. I'll select the bill date. Let's pay the electricity for the previous month. So let's do that. And right here, I'm going to select product, and I will select electricity. And here I want to hit the correct account, and I want to buy, let's say we used 100 kilowatt hours for the previous month, and I believe the price can be around 27 per unit. I could be wrong, so I'm just going to put it right there. So I'm paying 2,700. So I used kilowatt hours, and of course there are emissions per kilowatt hours. I'm going to confirm it, and I'm just going to leave the bill right there. So here already you can see that there's a smart button telling me what emissions are associated with this payment. So I'm just going to go there, and I can see there's 4.93 kgs of CO2 emitted. I'll go to my ESG app, go to measure, carbon footprint. And now I have all scopes. I have scope 1, I have scope 2, and I have scope 3. It's showing 0 because we are essentially having kilograms when we are reporting in tons. But of course, as we continue to run our operations, as the electricity consumption increases with time, we are going to have our figures right there. So that's basically how we handle emissions, scope 2 emissions in Odoo. I'll see you in the third video where I'll be showing you how to handle scope 3 emissions. Of course, we've done that, but I can just use one other example. I will see you in the last video for environment. See ya and have a good time.